testimony. I have a good many questions, so I will begin with the first few questions, and then my colleagues will ask questions, and I will be able to stay and ask remaining questions. Let me ask you about coal. You know, I asked during, I believe it was your confirmation hearing, your statement, coal is my worst nightmare, that you had made, and you described the context of that statement, which is, I understand it. But this budget essentially flat funds coal research and development. And the fact is, coal is our most abundant resource, by far, not even close. And if it's our most abundant resource, and I believe, and many believe, and I would hope you believe, that we can continue to use coal because we can use science, research, and technology to decarbonize coal, then how do we get there if we flat fund research and development with respect to coal? So can you give me a little bit of the philosophy that led to a flat funding for that account? I would have expected, given what the President said about the substantial front-end investments for these kinds of things, I would have expected a very substantial recommended increase in order that we might be able to use coal in our future because it's our most abundant resource.
Well, Senator Chairman, I agree with you, and I have to say that this budget reflects that because it has folded in the fact that we have received $3.4 billion substantial funds in the Economic Recovery and Reinvestment Act. Many of the pilot programs for that money, the $3.4 billion that might have been funded in this section, are now have gone over to that. So in a certain sense, that incredibly large amount of funding for these pilot programs and the investigations are then say, well, we will continue this current budget. Certainly, if it were not for the Recovery Act funds, you would have seen a different budget. So even though I know the philosophy of the Recovery Act was to be seen as strictly a supplemental, in the context of that addition, I think it's reasonable.
Well, that was the philosophy, actually, but I think most of the stimulus funding is considered to be demonstration projects rather than R&D. And, you know, in the area of solar, which I support, and some other areas, even though there was substantial money in the stimulus, there's also substantial money in R&D, but coal is there flat funded. And quickly, do you believe that we will have to continue to use coal in our future and need to find ways to decarbonize coal?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we'll talk more about that. Let me ask you about hydrogen. You have essentially zeroed out the hydrogen program. You've moved a portion of it into a different direction, but there are about 190 ongoing hydrogen projects that are unfunded. We've got, you know, about 500 jobs, 140 at universities, 150 at national laboratories, 235 in industry that have been working on hydrogen. And I agree that hydrogen is not near term, but I also agree if someone is going to look at things that are not near term but are essential in the longer term, who but the Department of Energy should do that? I'm stunned that the budget essentially just moves away from hydrogen fuel cell research and stops projects in the middle of these projects. I don't understand just deciding to take projects that are half completed and say, you know what, we've decided that we're not going to do those projects anymore. I'm a big fan of hydrogen and fuel cells, and I believe that they are going to be part of our future. I agree it's not near term, but I agree also that the Energy Department has a significant role in continuing this research. Your response?
Well, this was a tough call. I think there were a lot of, because it was centered mostly on saying that hydrogen for vehicles is not near term, and that we wanted to prioritize to get more, to be investing more in things like advanced batteries, something that I could see in the next 10, 15 years could actually be adopted on a significant mass deployment scale. Hydrogen stationary fuel cells, I think, we will continue funding. There are real issues that I have with transportation vehicles. The most problematic, in my opinion, is we still have not figured out how to store hydrogen in a compact form. And so while we can be funding more basic research and looking for ways to do that, that is something of real significance. The other is the infrastructure. we would have to create a totally new infrastructure in order to have the hydrogen vehicles be fueled. Not insignificant is the fact that the hydrogen, if we were to deploy this within the next 10 years, would come out of reforming natural gas. And it's a questionable call as to whether we want to be using the reforming of natural gas. And so there are many issues. At a more basic research level, I think there have been advances in fuel cells. And we want to push on more radical approaches to these things. But I think stationary hydrogen is going to be, in my opinion, the first application.
Well, in North Dakota, we're actually using wind power to produce hydrogen from water, separating hydrogen from, well, at any rate. I mean, my point is that I think the department has made a significant mistake here, and I, for one, am not interested in shutting down these research projects, and we're going to do everything we can to continue them. I mean, if we're only looking at near term, the next 5 to 15 years, that's, you know, when you come around talking about cap and trade and climate change, you're going to talk about 2040 and 2060, 2070. So I really think this is an important area of research. President Bush, Senator Domenici, myself, so many others have been very involved in this, and to see these contracts shut down in the middle of the contract on very important research, I think is not a smart thing to do. So we'll have more to discuss about that. Quickly, what is the status of the development of the Nuclear Waste Blue Ribbon Commission?